On your Friday episode of Locked On Raptors, we take a little break and cleanse the palate from a week of transaction talk and reflect on an all-time Raptors great, Fred VanVleet. It didn't end very well, of course. There were mixed feelings on VanVleet by the close of his Raptors career, but you can't deny he did a lot of pretty cool stuff as a Raptor. We're going to count down our top 3 Fred VanVleet moments, get some honorable mentions and some listener submissions as well, with Jamar Hinds of Raptors Republic all coming up today. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Friday, July the 7th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 9 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on Twitter at Woodley Sean. You can follow, subscribe to, rate, and review the show for free on your favorite podcast apps and on YouTube. We're also on Instagram if you want to go follow over there. Not on Threads yet. I can't figure out how to do it with the Locked On Raptors account and my own account. It's all very confusing. We don't need more social media. I'm sure we'll be on Threads at some point. But you can also just join us in the Discord. That's the best place to go, baby. The link is in the description. Come hang out. We got like 140 little sickos like you hanging out, talking Raptors, getting into the free agency and all of the stuff that's going on, trade season. It's great. So come and hang out. We even had hot architecture talk yesterday after Jalen McDaniels complimented Toronto on its buildings. So that's a little sneak peek at what you're looking at in the Locked On Raptors Discord. Again, link in the description. Come hang out. Would love to see you in there. And let's get to it. I wanted to cleanse the palate a little bit today. I'm frankly a little burnt out on transactions. And with DeJounte Murray signing a 4-year, $120 million extension with the Hawks yesterday, that would seem to put the Pascal Siakam trade buzz a little bit on the back burner for now. So we'll get into it if there's more to come in the next little while here, but it does not seem like there's any Pascal movement whatsoever. No other guard trades or anything like that going on. No offer sheets and sign-in trades for Ayo Dosunmu or whomever. So we'll revisit transaction stuff next week, but I wanted to take this Friday to sort of, do the thing that sports are frankly all about, which is remember cool stuff that cool guys did wearing your team's jersey. And we're going to do that today with Fred VanVleet, who, of course, a week ago signed with the Houston Rockets for 3 years, $130 million, ending his 7-year Toronto Raptors tenure. And while I know by the end there were a lot of folks who were kind of over the Fred VanVleet experience, very mixed feelings, very polarizing player by the end, I feel like everybody can agree Fred VanVleet did a lot of cool stuff as a Raptor, and he goes down as one of the best players in franchise history. I don't think any lower than 6th, frankly. We'll get to that when I get back to ranking every Raptor, which will be coming very soon, I promise. But here today to help me count down our top 3 Fred VanVleet moments and get into some honorable mentions and listener submissions and all that is our pal Jamar Hinds from Raptors Republic. Jamar, how are you, my friend? Are you ready to talk some Fred?
I'm ready to talk some Fred. This may be the last time I wear this shirt. So, I don't really have another reason to wear it. It's more like, I guess, a collector's item or something. But as far as just real quick out there, as far as greatest Raptors, I probably have Fred 7th on my list.
Okay.
Kyle would be first.
Yep.
DeMar, Vince, Kawhi, whatever order you want to put it, I don't care. And then Pascal and Bosh. So for me, Fred would be 7th on that list. And about Fred being polarizing at the end. I mean, we all wish that the ending was a little bit better the last year and a half. But his story just to come up from an undrafted player to where he was, I mean, you can't deny that. So
of course.
I'm just gonna stick to the good.
That's all it is. Good vibes today, man. We don't need to have any angry comments today about why are you talking about Fred? Yeah, we're talking about it because that's what sports are for. You remember the cool guys on your team. Yeah. I won't read them. It's fine. Let's dive in, shall we, Jamar? We're gonna basically run through our top 3 and just kind of go one at a time through the next few segments here. We'll get at the very end to some listener submissions, some honorable mentions that maybe didn't make the cut if there are any. But let's begin. I'll start with my number one Fred moment. And it's also, there's like a personal element tied into this as well, as it's a moment that caused me great professional fear. So for me, it is Fred VanVleet earning an NBA Finals vote for his incredible defense on Steph Curry in the NBA Finals, getting elbowed in the temple, as was shown on the shirt for those who are not watching that you are currently wearing. There you go. Let's hold it up again. The very, very painful Draymond Green elbow that Fred VanVleet took in those finals and believe in Game 4. He had 22 points in Game 6, including 3 made threes in the fourth quarter, along with a three-shot trip to the free throw line, so 12 points in that fourth. Really, really incredible stuff. And the reason it is so buried in my brain is it caused me great panic. Those who have been listening to the show for a very long time will know I co-wrote a book with Alex Wong called We the Champs, a historical look back at the Raptors title run. And this book was written over the course of the NBA Finals. I'd pre-written pretty much all of it. And the last element I had to do, Jamar, was a little blurb on the Finals MVP, which before going out to go drink at Hurricanes on Bloor West to go watch the game with my friends, I pre-wrote the Kawhi thing. I was like, oh, okay, I'll just slap in a few stats from Game 6, and that'll be it. Then Fred VanVleet starts going off, and I start getting a little bit nervous about 9 beers in, 8 hours into sitting at this bar because you had to be there so early. Yeah, I was terrified that he was actually going to win Finals MVP in some surprise vote, and that I was going to have to like rewrite a blurb at 2 a.m. while having consumed half my body weight in Hurricanes house lager. I was very scared, and then of course it comes down that Kawhi wins. The relief is washing over me, but it's bloody cool that Fred VanVleet got a Finals MVP vote. That is number one for me. Jamar, what is your number one? And if you have any last stray thoughts on him making, maybe you have that coming up in your top 3 at some point, but yeah, what are you going with number one here?
Well, first of all, shout out Hubie Brown for that one Finals vote.
Shout out Hubie Brown, a brave man.
So we're supposed to come up with 3. I actually had 8 because I'm just extra. Actually, no, I have 7. Whatever. That's because I knew that we're gonna overlap.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I'm gonna go with my favorite Fred game.
Okay,
and that is Game 5 against Milwaukee. I mean, obviously, he's had other games where he put up more points. We'll get to that later, but this game was the first time I legitimately thought the Raptors were going to win the championship, because if you go back to that series, Game 1, Lowry was amazing. They lose. They should have won that game. Game 2, they get their ass kicked. They're down 2-0. Game 3, double overtime. Kawhi's limping. You're like, oh my God, how sustainable is this? Game 4 was a solid win, but it's just like Game 5, you knew if they were going to win the series, they had to win that game. And they started out terrible. And I think Fred made 7 of 9 threes that game.
He did.
Milwaukee fans, they got some sort of relief 2 years later when they won the title, but he gave them nightmares still. I'm sure Bucks fans are still shaking their head over that game. And it's special for Fred because if you go back to even the Sixers series, he had a horrible series. I think he averaged something like 2 points a game.
Could barely play him, yeah.
Yeah, he's supersized Sixer squad, just wasn't the right matchup. He wasn't good in the first 3 games of the Bucks series either. By Game 3, when he's just missing wide open after wide open after wide open shot, everybody's like, okay, you have to bench Fred at this point. Put in Jeremy Lin or something. You can't. You
what a cursed sentence in the year of our Lord 2019.
Yeah, you can't play Fred. And then, Game 4, he started to have a little bounce back. And then he had, the Fred Jr. moment where all of a sudden he just starts making every single 3. And I just remember that game, being back and forth, and he just kept the Raptors in it with a bunch of 3s. And Marv Albert kept having the same calls, like VanVleet for 3 again. And I specifically remember the last one because, the Raptors had a decent lead, and then Milwaukee ties it. I think Brook Lopez hit the 3. It's about 2.5 minutes left. And then back the other way, Fred makes another 3 right away. puts the Raptors back up, and then they never gave up the lead again from there.
Mm-hmm.
And that I feel like that was just the most important game for Fred and for his confidence too, because Fred's a pretty confident guy. He's never been short of confidence, but it had to take a little hit of his playoff run at that point. And I feel like that propelled, his finals performance and for him to get that finals MVP vote. So I feel that probably was, I don't think I'm being dramatic by saying that was probably the most important game of Fred's career, because it's like he kind of arrived in a clutch standpoint in that game.
Yeah, I mean, I often associate that game with Kawhi hitting pull-up threes over Brook Lopez, but Fred going 7 of 9 from deep is just as much a part of that one. And yeah, I mean, that's the Freddie Jr. Sensation, right? 14 of 17 on threes after going 1 of 8 in game 3. He comes out, goes 3 of 3 in game 4, 7 of 9 in the next game, finishes the series 14 of 17 after the birth of his child. And man, just an absolute blast of a time. Really glad that he turned it around. And hey, shout out to him as well from that series. Game 3, he goes 1 of 11 from the field, 1 of 8 from deep, but had to play down the stretch in that game because of Kyle fouling out, and did pretty admirably. Yeah, like they don't win that game without Fred, coming in and capably running the show with Kyle fouled out with like 6 minutes left in regulation. The lowest point of that playoff run for me, where I was convinced it was done. Yeah. We'll come back on the other side, get into our number 2 Fred VanVleet moments, and keep up the good vibes here on a Friday. Before we do that, however, I must tell you about BetterHelp. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. And look, therapy is something, it doesn't have to be a thing that you use to get through serious trauma or big time, massive life events. It can just be something to help make your day-to-day a lot easier to manage as well. We got a lot of stuff coming at us. Normal life is back upon us. And guess what? Normal life is full of stress and decisions. And it's nice to have someone to be able to talk about those decisions with, so you know that you're on the right track to making the right decisions for you and the people around you. And it's just nice in therapy to have someone that you're talking to without an agenda. They're there to listen to you. It's not like you're talking to someone else in your life who has their own stuff going on and their own sort of perspective on who you are. It's just there for someone to listen, and it's a wonderful thing. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. That is big. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first order. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off with BetterHelp. All right, we continue on here. Your first listener of the day, Jamar Hinds of Raptors Republic along. Thanks to the everydayers of the show for tuning in. If you are an everydayer, let us know in the comments. We'd love to know that information so we can get you some help, and you're the very, very best. Let's continue on here. Our top 3 Fred VanVleet moments. I'll go with my number 2 here, and this is a regular season game. I'm a person who is fond of regular season games. I think we undervalue the regular season too much. And this particular regular season game will always stand out in my mind as one of the highlights of one of the most fun regular seasons I've ever watched. We're going back to Thursday, January the 11th, 2018. Raptors, Cavs, national television. Kyle Lowry is out of this game. So is Serge Ibaka. Oh, I'm so glad. What an incredible game. Fred VanVleet and the bench mob arrive and absolutely smack LeBron and the Cavs 133-99 in Toronto on national TV. The Powell, Pirtle, Siakam, Fred quartet combines for 64 points, with Fred scoring 22 of those on 8 of 11 shooting and 6 of 8 from deep. That was just so uproarious and joyous, and to see it happen on the national stage. There have been a lot of really good and fun, like, highlight Cavs games from the regular season, I'd argue. The Lou Williams game back in 2014. There's the Kyle Lowry step-back winner back in 2016. But this one might take the cake among really fun landmark wins over the LeBron Cavs. You had this on your list as well. Take it away. What are your thoughts on Fred and his 22 points in that national TV coming out party for the bench mob?
Yeah, it was a TNT game, and we gotta grasp for a few straws when it comes to the Cavs, because we know how the playoff games went. But Yeah,
I don't know what you're talking about. I've repressed all those memories.
I believe the 22 was a career high at the time.
Sounds right, yeah.
Because the reason why I would think so is because, and my favorite part of that game isn't actually even the game, it's the post game. Now, if you remember, like about, I don't know, like I want to say a couple weeks before, DeMar had a career high 52, right?
Yeah.
And
this was an incredible season, man. Holy God. Like, so much fun. Carry on.
yeah, in the locker room, when DeMar was talking, JV wrote a sign with 52, and DeMar was laughing and everything. So a couple weeks later, JV keeps that sign, crosses out the 5, puts in a 2, and Fred's there talking, and he stands beside him, smiling, holding up the sign with 22 points. So JV was an amazing Raptor in his own right, and always hilarious and whatnot. But I just
remember good vibes, man. God,
that moment was so wholesome. So I always remember that game specifically because of JV and that 22 sign. So
that's a great one.
That was Fred's coming out game where he kind of announced himself to the league. He ended up that season being a finalist for Sixth Man of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was on my list. So another one for me is I'm gonna pick a moment, not a game, and the moment is from this past season, and I have never seen a player go at a ref the way Fred went at Ben Taylor after the Clippers loss. Now, there was a lot of anger built up from the previous game against the Nuggets, a game that, they completely got screwed out of. The Nuggets.
That was the Scotty ejection game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scott Foster. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was a Scott Foster game. The Nuggets side fan in me could say, yeah, the Raptors got completely screwed in that game. And obviously there was a lot of built up anger already going into the next game against the Clippers. I think it was the third quarter where Ben Taylor really set Fred off. But post game, he was like, Ben Taylor is terrible. He just kept going at him. And I've never seen a player go out a ref, like call out a specific ref like that. All my years of watching the NBA, that's the first time I've ever seen that. And that was like the number one talking point the next day nationally. Everybody was talking about the way Fred went at the ref because, refs have annoyed everybody at some point in watching basketball, especially seems more so recently than in the past, just quick text and everything. And, sometimes fans blame the refs a little bit too much, but this was very warranted. And it felt like Fred was speaking for a lot of people, not just himself, not just the Raptors, because you even see guys like, I remember Marcus Smart the next morning, and when I think he had his own thoughts on refs, and he's like, did you see what Fred VanVleet said? Say no more. I don't need to say anything else. So it felt like he was.
I'll let him take the fine for me now.
It felt like he was going to bat for everybody. And I actually thought my initial thoughts, I actually thought Fred was going to get suspended. The only reason why he didn't is because
he was right.
Well, that, but because he did this post game. This wasn't like an in-game on TV type of thing. He did it post game. I feel like that's the only reason he didn't get suspended. I go back to the 2004 season where Shaq, ironically against the Raptors, another terribly officiated game, and that his post game interview, where even though they won, the Lakers won, and then he was like, NBA is losing money. David Stern wants to know why. Well, this is why, refs want to take over the effing game. And then reporter is like, Shaq, you're on live. And he's like, looks right in the camera. He's like, I don't give a shit. So Shaq got a 1-game suspension for that. Like, I kind of compared it to that where, just calling out the league, calling out the refs. But that was on TV, so Shaq got suspended, and I think that's the only reason why Fred avoided a suspension. But just league-wide, that had to be one of the coolest moments to just see like someone completely go at a ref like that. And it was like a 2-minute rant, so that was awesome.
It truthfully might have been the only super The only time a national Raptors story framed the Raptors in a positive light this year was when Fred VanVleet was being lauded for his calling out of the officials, which I think speaks to the general dour tones that were, emanating from the team for most of the year. But yeah, awesome pick. Really enjoyed that one. It was, I think, probably press conference of the year in the NBA, which should be an award that gets handed out, the Allen Iverson Award for best press conference. We're going to come back on the other side, get into our number 3. We got some listener submissions to run through as well, and some honorable mentions. We'll get to that as we continue to reflect on Fred VanVleet's career with the Raptors in just a second. Before we do that, however, got to tell you about Locked On Leafs. Go check out Mike and Dave over talking about the Buds as they make all sorts of offseason moves. Are they good? Are they bad? Is Jim Treliving good or terrible at his job? You could take any one move and make an argument either way, but go listen to Locked On Leafs as they've got you covered over on your favorite podcast apps and on YouTube. All right, Jamar, number 3 in our list. Let's go. For me, this is going to be a really fun trivia question to trip people up on in 10 years once we're a little further away from it happening. Fred VanVleet is the franchise record holder for single-game scoring. You forget about that sometimes. 54 points against the Magic back on February 2nd, I believe. I lost the page. February 2nd, 2021, in the Tampa season. A season that sucked. Full-on, miserable year. But this was one of the highlights. And for me, I will always have a really positive association with this game because it's probably the high point of that season, and that season sucked. And it was amplified by the fact that it happened during maybe the most depressing time of the pandemic, like closing in on a year of lockdown, more or less, watching this team play in Tampa, so far away, no fans, all this stuff, to see Fred go into Orlando and put up 54 points on 17 of 23, 11 of 14 from deep, 9 of 9 from the line, had 3 steals and 3 blocks at the heyday of his steals being called blocks, sort of peak. That came at such a, I think, important time for my own sanity to see that go down, like in the middle of that season. And it actually kicked off, more or less, the best stretch the Raptors had that year. This was the second game of what became a 9-3 stretch for the Raptors, where they pulled themselves back, I think, to 500. And then 500. Yeah, and they were looking like they were on track to be like the 4th or 5th best team in the Eastern Conference. They'd beaten really good teams in that stretch. Yeah, and then the whole team got COVID, and the season ended, and it was awful. But at least we got that from Fred. Really, really awesome. I don't know what to say. He's the all-time franchise record holder for points in a game, which is hilarious and super deserved as well. But yeah, that's going to trip people up 10 years from now as a trivia question, I have to assume, until, of course, the Raptors sign Terrence Ross on a minimum and he goes and scores 55 this year. Jamar, do you have any thoughts on the 54-point game, and do you have your number 3 to share?
Yeah, my one thing is, I thought, well, first of all, he couldn't make 1 or 2 more threes because Daniel Marshall's 12 threes was sitting right there. That Daniel Marshall 12 3-point game against Philly in like the 05 season, another horrible Raptors season, by the way. I thought he was going to set a new Raptor record in threes made, but I mean, when you make double-digit threes, the defense even Orlando's defense starts to pay a little bit more attention. So, he got a few drives for layups to get that record, but I thought he was going to break that. I thought he was going to break both records, but I'll take one.
The bucket where he breaks the record is like a fun one. He's like cutting on a 45 and Kyle hits him, and he does like this weird, like, sort of spin in the paint and puts it up and in. It was like the most finish Fred's ever had inside 3 feet. Fun little footnote at the end of that one. Sorry, go ahead with your number 3.
Okay, so I'm trying to decide in real time because I have 2 left. Like, I mentioned I had 7 so far of the 5 that have been mentioned. All of them are on my list. So which one should I go with, and which one should be my honorable mention? You know what? I'm going to go with, I believe this was the 2022 season. I'm going to go with the game where we're talking about, it's a good segue. We're talking about no fans. I believe there was no fans in Toronto for this game when they did come back. It was one of the games where, Toronto was under lockdown again. The Utah game, where Fred got his first career triple-double and kind of put his stamp on being an all-star, making the all-star team, which, you know, going from undrafted to being an all-star, a cool story. Ben Wallace has also done it, but I mean, that's very rare for an undrafted player. And, you know, Pascal that was the season where Pascal was, you know, had the shoulder surgery, I want to say, and was working his way back for the first month or so. And Fred had to do a lot of heavy lifting, and probably all that heavy lifting probably ruined Fred for the second half of that season and probably even bleeding into this season.
Not dissimilar to Kyle carrying the team when DeMar was out in 2014-15.
Yeah. And then having absolutely nothing left for the Wizards series. But I specifically remember the third quarter because he was in complete takeover mode. You name it, you know, passing, defense, pull-up threes, layups. I want to say he had like 25 in that quarter, and just everything was falling. And like I said, he really put the stamp on being an all-star in that game. You know, first career triple-double, even, you know, Kyle was excited, you know, and in Miami at this point was excited for him, posting. It's like he finally got one. And has Fred had another triple-double since? Or is that his only one?
I think that was his only one.
That might be his lone triple-double. So, you know, statistically, outside of, you know, the 54-point game, that's probably Fred's best game as a pro. So that definitely has to be on the list. And I'll get to my honorable mention a little bit later.
Yeah, for sure. That was an incredible game. 37-10-10 to be exact. It was, in fact, his highest game score on Basketball Reference of that season, 21-22. Another game worth noting as well. I believe this one came November 11th, if I'm not mistaken. Same window where he's, again, filling in and covering off.
This feels like my honorable mention, but go on.
Or maybe it's not from November 11th. It's maybe from March. They played the Sixers. Yeah, it was the Sixers game. I think the one where Precious pulls up for three, or is there's like a home and home there at the end of 21-22 where the Raptors beat the Sixers twice, if I recall. And you get the Sam Cassell big ball celebration.
That's yep. That's my honorable mention. I was trying.
That was a submitted one from Duncan in the Discord as well. So same wavelength.
I'm all out now. That was my honorable mention. I don't even remember too much from the game. I know he hit a big corner three, and then that's when he did the Sam Cassell dance. That's what I remember most from that game. But yeah, that was my honorable mention. So
it was really nice how the Raptors for a second there just tormented the Sixers, huh? They won 3 of 4 games against them that year, and yeah, he actually only played in one against the Sixers that year, and it was the big balls game. So yeah, it does look like November 11th actually was the one where he did play. He didn't play in the ones down the stretch. So please blame Sports Illustrated for having weird dates on their stories. The other honorable mention I wanted to throw out, not an NBA game from Fred VanVleet, but Game 3 of the G League Finals in 2017, a game that I recall a lot of people kind of split screening because this featured Pascal Siakam, Bruno Caboclo, and this was going on simultaneously to the closeout game against the Bucks in 2017, the game where DeMar DeRozan's yamming on Thon McCurr and Patrick Patterson had a big hammer as well. And all the while, you have Fred and Pascal carving up the Rio Grande Valley Vipers, I believe, in the finals of that series. And Fred VanVleet in Game 3, the clincher, 28 points and 14 assists, just to cap an incredible G League run. I believe that is the last we would see Fred VanVleet in the G League beyond that. But yeah,
that's a hard game to split screen because you go back to the Raptors Bucks closeout game. The Raptors blew a 25-point lead in that game.
Yeah. It was a very stressful time. I remember this was like a very stimulating evening, and I remember being like super invested despite the far more important Raptors game going on in like the 905 getting crowned as champions. It was that's a fun deep cut.
I specifically remember that Raptors closeout game because I was doing highlights for SportsCenter. Me and Andrew Damlin, who we're
Yeah.
teaming up on that, and
Mhm.
we're watching the game, and the Raptors blow the 25-point lead, and then Jason Terry hits a three, Bucks go up 2, and Raptors call a timeout, and we're just utterly silent. We're just sitting there, just completely stunned. First of all, I got to change the way the highlights work. I only have like 2-3 minutes
Yeah.
of highlights I can put in. So now I got to change everything. I thought this was like an easy ass game to put together. Now I got to change everything. But just from a fan perspective, I'm just sitting there and we're just stunned, and no one's saying a word during the commercials. And then Damelin is like, a couple minutes later, is like, we can still win this game. I'm like, yeah, we can totally win this game. We're only down 2. But it was just like, what the hell? I didn't even remember that there was a G League game on, or they were in a. Yeah, I didn't remember that those 2 games fell on the same day. I just that Bucks game was insane. But
Yeah, that Bucks game was crazy. They should never have needed 6 games to beat that Bucks team, by the way. Very irritating. The last one here, another listener submission from Stago in the Discord, a great Discord member. He just noted this is like a really, really deep cut, probably not an all-time moment, but he remembers watching the Summer League squad in 2016 and thinking, oh my God, this squad is stacked. I want to go back and read this roster because it kind of was stacked for Summer League standards.
Yeah, the Raptors had a hell of a Summer League team for a couple years, but yeah,
let's remember some Summer League guys, shall we? Davion Barry, Bruno Caboclo, Drew Crawford, DeAndre Daniels, picked like 3 spots ahead of Nikola Jokic. I'm not mad. Jalen Jones, Alex Kirk, Yannick Morera, remember him? Jakob Poeltl, Norm Powell, Pascal Siakam, EJ Singler, Evan Smotrich, Quinton Upshur, DeLon Wright, Fred VanVleet. That is your Summer League lineup.
Your bench mob, basically.
Yeah, basically,
like
the bench mob takes Vegas.
NOG.
Yes. Very fun stuff. Really, look, man, I know it didn't end super well. There's a lot of people who have their feelings about Fred, but that dude did a lot of good stuff for the Raptors. Yeah. I'm glad we got to remember it and sort of talk through it here today. And I think that's where we can probably leave this one. Jamar, thanks so much for hanging out, man. This was fun going back into the vault a little bit. Do you have anything you would like to promote for the good people out there?
Yeah, you can follow me as always, Jamar BH on Twitter. I do have a Threads. I'm doing that Abe Simpson thing where I just walk in, take a look, and then walk out. Man, I'm too old to learn a new social media. I have my set, okay? And it's just like, I mean, I made it for the hell of making it because I was bored and everybody else was making it, but I'm not going to tell you to follow me on this, whatever.
I too am on Threads. You don't need to follow me. I'm not going to use it very much. Don't worry. I'm still going to be on Twitter until it stops working because I'm a sicko.
Yeah, until
it's just
Elon
the thing I know.
So in terms of work, I'm dusting off the old laptop this week because Raptors are in Summer League. I have a recap for the second game against Cleveland. That game's on Sunday, so I'll have a recap on Monday, and then I'll have a recap for the last scheduled game, I believe. I think their 4th game. I'll have a recap for that as well on Raptors Republic. There's a link on my Twitter with all my work on there. So yeah, just check out for that.
Yeah, Summer League starts tonight. We'll talk about it next week. Vivek will also be along. We're probably going to take a look at some of our favorite potential guard targets for the Raptors out there. It's pretty slim pickings, but we will go ahead and do that because it feels like the Raptors need to add a guard to this roster at some point between now and the start of the season if they want any hope of this roster making sense. We'll get into all of that. And in the meantime, enjoy Summer League. Enjoy the Grady Dickening as it begins tonight. And we will talk to you again on Monday. In the meantime, support the show by following.
Sorry, I had to cut you off.
It's all good.
Support the show. Good, go on.
Thanks, buddy. Subscribe, follow, rate, review, all that good stuff. Please find us on YouTube. Hit the big red subscribe button over there. And again, join the Discord. Link is in the description. Come hang out. Super fun. Lots of new folks joining in there. Nice to see everybody. It's a great little place to build a little community around the show, which is a very nice thing. So we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks to Fred VanVleet for being cool for all those years. And we'll talk to you again on Monday for another episode of Locked On Raptors. Bye-bye. Thanks for hanging.